Hello, everybody. Casie Shepherd, integrative health coach here, bringing you guys more information and education all the time. The more you know, the more you understand, the deeper you can dive into your own health, the better you can be. We look for optimization, full body optimization. It starts in the cell. And when the cells are healthy, they carry out their correct functions. The glands work the way they're supposed to, or hormones balance, and our gut functions better. So I like to get into the deeper stuff, explain to you guys more about how the systems work and how I look at everything. People think being in shape and feeling good is some easy process, and it's truly not. And it's not to discourage people, but it's to help them understand that if you've had problems reaching your optimal health, it's because you maybe haven't looked deep enough, and it's because it is a complex system. There is a lot to think about, and there could be a number of things that are off. So I want to open your minds to look at different ways that things could be off for you and other things to look into. So my video today is about 10 reasons that you are bloated after you eat. And a lot of people think that bloating is just a normal part of eating, and they're always bloated after they eat, and so it must just be normal, or maybe they ate too much. But it is not normal to be super bloated after you're done eating, or have any sort of discomfort, or to have any sort of overly full feeling. That overly full feeling, that bloatedness, that gassiness, that pressure, feeling really tired after you eat, none of those symptoms are normal, and a lot of people have normalized those things. And I want to go through today 10 reasons that you could be feeling that any one of those symptoms after you're done eating, and I can get a little bit more in depth into them. So let's get into it. The first reason that you could feel extremely bloated after you're done eating is that you have low stomach acid. I've talked about this many times in other YouTube videos before, other reels, other videos, but low stomach acid is also known as hypochlorhydria, and it is when we lack the stomach acid to break down proteins. And when we don't have that, a lot of people end up eating less and less protein over time because they can't break it down. They feel really uncomfortable. Our stomach sits right here, kind of like right below our sternum. And when we eat protein or heavy meals and we don't have enough of that stomach acid to break it down, the food just sits in there for longer periods of time. It is actually pretty easy to get low stomach acid. Our stomach acid gets lower as we age. Under stress, we stop producing as much stomach acid. If we don't have enough sodium and salt intake, our stomach acid production can go down. If we have low thyroid function, typically we have low stomach acid. If we have a number of different pathogens that have gotten into our system, or we have low of our certain commensal bacteria, of healthy bacteria, our stomach acid production might go down. And so a lot of people become vegetarian or vegan, or they just unknowingly aren't eating as much protein and they're not really thinking about it, which leads to like a higher carbohydrate or fat intake. And that can lead to erratic blood sugar, because we need that protein to stabilize our systems. So there's a lot of issues that come with that stomach acid production. We stop digesting as much, and starts getting food into our digestive tract, leading to leaky gut, some of these other issues, which I will talk about in a little bit. But it's just a huge problem, and when we're not creating that super acidic environment in our stomach, we're also letting pathogens and bacteria and things through that shouldn't be. I mean, you think about eating sushi, which is like a raw fish, and even if it isn't sushi or whatever, your stomach is still one of the first lines of defense in killing things off prior to it entering your system. And when you don't have enough of that to kill it off, a lot of these pathogens, bacteria, things are getting through, they're not getting killed off, and then it's like just sitting in your stomach. So it can create a lot of havoc in your system, and I see it often. So that is number one. Number two is something called SIBO, which is SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. SIBO can actually be in a couple different areas of your gut. Typically it's in the small intestine, but it is a bacterial overgrowth, which creates a lot of issues. Can have different kinds of SIBO. There are different bacterial strains. The bacteria strains in SIBO produce certain gases, methane gases, sulfuric acid gases. If you have sulfur gases, bacteria in your stomach, you may have that like rotten egg smell. If you have gas, those specific bacteria are producing that sulfuric gas. That's what they feed off of, and that's what your body's reacting to. That's the bloating and the gas that your bacteria are giving off when you're eating those certain foods. And if you have methane producing bacteria in the small intestine, is a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, you respond better to kind of like a FODMAP diet, where you have certain like histamine foods or certain foods that have less histamine in them and give off hence less methane gases. So I know that sounds a little crazy to explain or understand maybe unless you understand a little bit more about this stuff, but certain bacteria live in certain parts and areas of the gut. SIBO is kind of hard to diagnose. We can see indications of it on a GI map test, see certain strains that might live in that area. We could do a breath test that may or may not confirm the SIBO and the kind of gases that are being produced and kind of come to conclusions there. But SIBO is another sort of like bacterial or pathogenic overgrowth that can cause a lot of that bloating and digestion. It's not the same as a food allergy. It's more that the bacteria are feeding off of certain kinds of foods that then produce a gas that causes that bloating feeling. So that makes sense. But that leads me to my next point, food sensitivities. Food sensitivities do create a lot of bloating and discomfort. Food sensitivities are an immune response, and that is a part of leaky gut. Leaky gut happens because we lack digestive capacity, meaning either A, stomach acid, B, enough bile flow with our gallbladder and liver, which we'll get into in a little bit, or C, pancreatic function, pancreatic enzymes like insulin, protease, amylase, lipase to break foods down properly. If we don't have enough to kill things off before they enter the gut or break things down properly, those food particles are entering our digestive tract, and along with the bacteria that gets through at the same time, we start getting this holes or these breaks in the tight junctions of our intestinal lining, and those food enzymes and proteins actually start getting through that gut lining out into our bodies, and they don't belong there. Those foods, enzymes, and proteins are not belong there. So the body starts creating an immune response to those specific foods, and we develop a sensitivity to an immune response to certain foods. And because the things we eat the most are the things that are getting through the most, we end up getting sensitivities a lot of times to the things that we're eating the most of. So unfortunately for most people, they think they're eating healthy and they're eating all these healthy foods. Well, then they're developing these sensitivities and allergies to those healthy foods even because of these breaks in the tight junctions of their digestive tract. And it's because of bacterial or pathogenic overgrowth, because of low commensal bacteria, and because of low digestive capacity through the pancreas, the gallbladder, or the stomach acid, combination of 1, 2, all 3, sometimes just 1. And so those food sensitivities, you're eating these foods and it's triggering this immune response, causing that inflammation and that bloat, which can become a big problem. And now when I do a lot of my GI tests and work with people one-on-one, I'm most of the time just running a food sensitivity test along with it because 100% of the time there's some food allergies going on. And if we want to heal the gut and bring that inflammation down and bring the bloat down and allow the body to heal, we need to remove those things at least for a chunk of time. And so getting rid of the problem that's causing the inflammation will allow the body to settle, bring the immune response down. We then also have to be supporting it with the digestive support that it needs while we kill off some of the pathogens that have caused that overgrowth. So there's just a different system to it. Eliminating food sensitivities by itself does not heal the problem. Food sensitivities are the trigger, but the low digestive capacity is the problem. So, and you really want to take a finite approach to that, because otherwise you're guessing. You want to know that you're getting the right support that your body needs. And we do that through a GI map test, DNA stool analysis, where we can tell exactly what digestive system is off and to what degree, so we know how to support it and how to heal it. Okay, so the next one is enzyme deficiencies. Enzymes are produced in the pancreas. We have protease, amylase, lipase. There's a lot of different kinds of enzymes, but all in all, they're typically pancreatic enzymes, and if we don't have the proper protease, amylase, lipase to break down our proteins, carbs, and fats, then we have a hard time breaking our food down, and we're seeing undigested food in the stools. Our body just gets that bloat. We can't break it down. Like, think about how food is in your body when you can't break it down. So not having the proper enzymes to break things down is important. But it's also very important in regulating our blood sugar levels. If we can't produce the right enzymes to break down our, let's say, just carbohydrates in general, those carbs are causing our blood sugars to become really erratic. And when we don't digest our proteins very well, then those proteins can't stabilize those glucose levels very well, and we can't break our proteins, carbs, and fats down very well. Then those energies, amino acids, fats, can't get into the cell where they belong to give us the energy that we need to utilize, and so it causes a lot of blood sugar dysregulation, over time insulin resistance. We see pancreatic insufficiency with our insulin levels, our blood sugar levels, our A1C levels. Even with the fat intake, I mean, our cells need that fat. Protein needs to stabilize our glucose levels. Glucose needs to get into the cell. We need to get the amino acids out of the protein that we're eating. In order to utilize those amino acids, I mean, everything we consume serves a function, and it's so important. We don't have the right proteins, carbs, and fats in our system. We don't have the right enzymes to break them down. We don't get them into the cell where we need them. The cell cannot carry out the function that it needs. This is how the imbalance starts. So, pancreatic enzymes and enzyme deficiencies, very important in the bloating digestive process. Next one, hormonal imbalances. There's many things. I mean, our insulin is a hormone, like I just talked about. Most people just think about sex hormones like estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. Progesterone is such a calming hormone in our gut, creates a lot of that smooth muscle function. It calms estrogen down to make it less harsh. And when we have some of this estrogen dominance, or for men like the low testosterone, insulin issues, cortisol is a hormone, vitamin D is a hormone. I mean, any of these hormone imbalances, the gut isn't getting what it needs. It's either slows digestion down or it creates more of a sluggish gut. Especially with estrogen dominance, we start to get more histamine issues, which I will be talking about in a couple more. But those hormone imbalances do create issues, and especially from like a thyroid hormone standpoint, thyroid is what regulates our metabolic rate, T3. So if we have low thyroid function, it slows the digestive tract down. We're keeping food in our gut longer than it should be. We're not digesting as fast as it should, so the food's kind of like sitting in there longer. Oh, hello, cat. Starts to ferment the food and the carbohydrates and all the things in our gut longer than it should. The bacteria start to grow and thrive more. I mean, it's a recipe for a disaster. So hormonal imbalances do create a lot of bloat and gut dysfunction. At the point where you have some hormone imbalances causing gut issues, you most likely have some digestive dysfunction or some issues with food sensitivities and stuff too. So it's all kind of a down trickle effect. The other one is mineral imbalances, things like potassium and magnesium. Magnesium is for smooth muscle function as well. It creates that calming effect. It allows, has a laxative effect. It protects our kidneys, and we use it in our thyroid function. Mineral imbalances can drive our stress levels if we have high sodium or low potassium or low calcium and magnesium, which are calming hormones. Any imbalances within the minerals can cause this disarray with our glandular system, which can then drive dysfunction, can cause issues with our stress hormones, whether they're high or too low. And thyroid dysfunction is huge. If our calcium magnesium is too high, we tend to have a slower thyroid function, very low cortisol. If our stress hormones are too high, we may have high sodium, high potassium, or high sodium to potassium imbalance, and maybe some imbalance in our calcium magnesium, which then drives our cortisol and stress levels up, and it can drive our stomach acid production down. So these mineral imbalances cause issues within the gut, and what our stomach acid and our enzyme production and some of the minerals functions are actually in the gut. But then also, because the minerals drive the hormones in our glandular function, they can also cause several other issues in that way. So that is another one. The next one is the gallbladder and bile flow. The gallbladder is in charge of storing the bile. The liver produces it. The gallbladder stores it. And when we eat fat, the gallbladder releases it to emulsify that fat and break it down and utilize it. And so any dysfunction within the liver and the gallbladder, whether you have had a gallbladder out, because I swear to God, half of America has had their gallbladder out. Most of them are women. A lot of them are women. If you do not have a gallbladder, you already have an issue. If you've had it taken out, you had issues before you hadn't even had it taken out, which is why you had to have it taken out. But if you have any gallbladder dysfunction, your liver is not producing enough bile, your liver is sluggish, you don't have the right detoxification pathways, you don't have the right minerals, like if you don't have enough magnesium, if you don't eat enough fat intake in general or healthy fats, the list goes on of how you could have gallbladder issues. But if your stools are floating, if you have constipation issues, constipation can come from a number of things, but or if you have like diarrhea right after you eat a higher fat meal or a heavier meal, that can be gallbladder dysfunction, and just a sign that you need gallbladder support. So a lot of people who eat a heavy fat meal and don't have enough gallbladder get like super bloated and super gassy, or if you get diarrhea right away, you have like really bad like stomach cramps after you eat like a heavier meat or a fattier meat or any meal that has some fat intake into it. But that's also very dangerous because we need fat in order to digest and absorb fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K. So if you can't break down even the fat intake that you're getting in, you're definitely not breaking down, and absorbing the fat-soluble nutrients that your body needs, which really impacts your hormones and your immune system and so many other things. So your gallbladder is very important. I don't know why they tell people they don't need it, because they absolutely need it. It's ridiculous. So that is one of the things that can be off. And one of the parts that's an issue is that the gallbladder and the pancreas work on kind of like the same access point. So they really affect each other. If you have your gallbladder taken out, you're going to start to have pancreatic issues. A lot of people do with blood sugar issues, insulin issues, a lot of just different problems. So the gallbladder is so important. Your fat intake is important. You can be very bloated because you have gallbladder issues. Again, it could be a number of different things going on. This is just one of them. Number 7 is blood sugar dysregulation. I was already talking about enzyme deficiencies, but spikes and drops all day long, your blood sugar really activates and drops your cortisol levels. I mean, every time you have an insulin spike from glucose, your cortisol levels go up and they go down, and they're up and down all day long. Your blood sugar should remain pretty stable. low protein diets or high carb, or eating too low carb, or not eating enough food and having your stress hormones all over the place, not having the right enzymes or stomach acid to break food down. I mean, all of these things can cause your stomach and your system to have erratic blood sugar levels. A majority of it is lifestyle and diet, but it can get to the point where your body doesn't know how to regulate its blood sugar levels because of producing too much insulin. If your body's pumping out insulin, and I do see it in the blood work where people have normal glucose, but they have elevated insulin, it's the first thing I ask these people is, do you get really like hangry, or do you have like pretty good spikes and get like really low and shaky sometimes? And they most of the time say yes. So your body eats something, your body produces too much. So if you eat something and your insulin levels increase too much in response to a glucose level, then you get these highs and lows. Or if you go too long throughout the day without eating, or not eating enough throughout the day, all these things can cause that, along with having, low digestive function, low enzyme production, low HCl or stomach acid to break things down. So not being able to break the carbs down properly alongside stress hormones or mineral imbalances, or not eating enough, or being stressed out. All these things can cause these spikes and these drops throughout the day. Again, we want to keep them fairly stable so we're not getting these erratic shifts. The body needs to feel safe and stable in order to be healthy and to heal. It's when you get these highs and lows where we get the cravings, where we feel hangry, where our body produces too much insulin in response to glucose. And this causes a lot of digestive discomfort, because when insulin goes too high, the stress hormones go up. We get bloated, or when they drop too low, I mean, the stress in general of that causes that inflammation and can cause a lot of bloating and can cause more issues over time. Next one is number 9, histamine response. Histamine is, a lot of people hear of it just from allergies day to day. We take antihistamines to reduce histamine. We need an enzyme called DIO enzyme to break histamine down. That is something we produce in the liver, I believe. And so if we have any liver issues or digestive issues, we may not be making enough of this enzyme to break histamine down, or if we are overloaded to histamine, which can happen when we have hormonal imbalances, like estrogen creates histamine. If we can't clear estrogen enough, we have to have the right detoxification pathways to clear estrogen. Estrogen is in everything. We have estrogenic toxins, xenoestrogens in our foods, in our environment, in our clothes, in everything. If we cannot clear estrogen properly through our body, we start to get overloaded with estrogen and histamine. We cannot clear that histamine properly, so we start to have overhistamine problems. There are foods that have high histamine in them. So if we already have an abundance of histamine, we're exposed to histamines constantly, we're exposed to estrogen, we can't clear it properly because we don't have enough of the enzyme to clear it. We have issues in our detoxification pathways. Then we're eating foods that have high histamine in them. Sulfates are number one, like wine, avocados, like random foods that have high histamine can cause more of a reaction, and they can cause that bloating because it's stress. Any response in the body that the body can't handle or doesn't have the capacity or what it needs to handle that response is going to cause stress. Any amount of stress can cause discomfort, because especially if it's a food that you're intaking and a lot of it clears to the gut and the liver and the lining, that's where that response is going to happen, which is in our gut. So the enzyme is produced in the liver and in the gut to break histamine down. If you don't have enough of it, that's where the stress and the bloating and all of that is going to happen. So that's another reason. Again, a lot of these things go hand in hand with each other. Most of the time, there's a few of them going on at the same time, if there's one of them. And the last one is gut infections. We talked about this with the SIBO, the SIBO, but a number of different gut infections can cause a lot of digestive distress. things. You can have certain infections in the colon. You can have certain infections anywhere in the body. We can have infections in our sinus cavity. People just think, oh, when you get sick, you have an infection in your sinuses. It's like, no, that bacteria lives wherever it wants in the body. And even if you're getting sick in your nasal capacity, doesn't mean that it's not also living in your gut. You get on a round of antibiotics for sinus infection. A lot of people have strep or staph infections. They get chronic strep throat or sinus infections. Those bacteria are also living in your gut, and every time you get on an antibiotic like that, sometimes they become stronger and stronger. That's why a lot of these people have reoccurring infections, because they don't completely kill it off, and then those bacteria develop biofilms and they get stronger over time. And so they're like, oh yeah, I'm just prone to them. It's like, no, it's still in your body. So anyways, gut infections do start to create issues because that bacteria is still alive in your gut. It's still creating issues in your intestinal tract. Some of these bacteria start to cause a lot of that erosion of the gut lining. You don't have enough of the healthy bacteria. A lot of those healthy bacteria are keeping that lining strong in your gut tract. And these gut infections are deteriorating it at the same time. And then we start to have immune system problems and mucosal lining problems and leaky gut problems, and the gut, sometimes the infections get stronger. And especially when you're on antibiotics that aren't working right for you, or it's not enough, or you have some resistance to those antibiotics, sometimes those infections get stronger, and then they're even harder to kill off. So anyways, but gut infections go beyond bacteria. You could have parasites, you could have viruses, you could have yeast, H. pylori. There's a lot of different kinds of gut infections. They all create different kinds of issues in the gut. They all react differently to different kinds of foods. They all can cause erosion of the gut lining. They can all cause food sensitivities. They can all cause, or prior to those gut infections, have had issues in the digestive organs. And so typically when you have a gut infection, you also have some sort of compromised gut digestive organ problems, whether it's, like I said, the HCl, stomach acid production, the pancreatic enzymes, or the gallbladder function, along with the gut infections. And that can just continues to make it worse and worse, spiral over time, so on and so forth. So anyways, that was 10 things that can cause bloating after meals. A lot of these you guys probably haven't thought about. A lot of people don't really think about it this in depth, but I'm trying to give you guys a different understanding of some of the things that can happen, and why we need to take a deeper look. I do GI, DNA, stool analysis testing. I test certain specific areas. We test antibiotic resistant genes, so we know if people are like reacting well to certain things or not. Sometimes medication is necessary, sometimes it's not. If you're taking something that your body is resistant to on a DNA level, some of these bacteria can get even stronger over time, to develop more of those biofilms and more of that resistance, which is a problem. So sometimes those antibiotic resistant gene panels are super nice to have along with the GI map test. But we test a lot of the mineral stuff along with it. We test comprehensive mineral testing. We do comprehensive hormone and metabolic work. I do oats testing for amino acids and detoxification pathways and many other things in the body. I do IgG food sensitivity. So there's a lot of different things that we would test. I definitely do intake calls for people if they're looking for what direction they need to take. Feel free to reach out to me, my email, and also download my free ebook in the description below if you want to get started on looking deeper into your body. This is a great overall view for everything that could be going on, give you a deeper snapshot, and look beyond the basics to your optimal health. And reach out to me on my website. Follow me on all social media platforms. Links in the description below.